Everyone knows that Yugi, also known as the Pharaoh or by his real name, spoiler for a show that ended in 2006, Atem, has a moniker that everyone knows him by, the King of Games. This is what Kaiba is trying to take from him at all times, simply by winning one game, something that's actually taken seriously by Atem despite it being the equivalent of going 28-1, but that one loss eliminated your championship status. If we go off of this interpretation, considering Atem has indeed lost on a few occasions, we can actually find out who the real King of Games really is. And if you like this sort of content, be sure to subscribe as it helps me out a lot with the new channel, and tell me what you'd like to see down in the comments section down below. We've actually been gaining a lot of subscribers and things have been going really well, so thanks! Appreciate it a lot! Be sure to check out my Twitch and all that, all the other plugs, but let's get into the video. So now we have to define what a loss is. A loss is exactly what it sounds like. You lose the duel. Unfortunately, that means no contests, draws, or otherwise interrupted duels don't count at all. If Yusei was the one called the King of Games, for example, that title certainly would have been lost to Callan, considering the fact that he was saved by his bike getting totaled. That's how card games work in the anime. This ain't even in the top 10 of weird garbage that gets pulled off. But, in addition, if a duelist gets disqualified in any way, that still counts. Like when Joey was literally about to win against Merrick, but stroked out and died at the last possible moment. A coma is a loss, but a different, shorter coma is not a loss. Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page. I'm glad we can all have that realized. Lastly, this is King of Games here, not Yugi himself or the Pharaoh from 3,000 years ago. So I'm not even going to be looking at Little Yugi's duels specifically, or Season 5's weird spirit duels that very few people can even understand or remember. Thank God. So, let's go over Atem's first loss, which is probably his weirdest. Some people may say this shouldn't count, but Atem accepted it, so we're gonna have to count it. The man duels a videotape, but that videotape is Pegasus. Pegasus uses his Millennium Eye to predict how the game is going to be played, counters at every point, but this is one of the few times a dog water rule actually hurts and doesn't help our protagonist. You see, Atem accepted there would be a duel of 15 minutes on the dot, and he would have won if he just attacked a few seconds earlier. Yes, this is what it takes to make him lose. My man straight up got timer scammed, not even kidding. No end of phase rule here, there is no mercy. The reason this is suspect is twofold. As first, this is a videotape, but the fact that Pegasus makes it a shadow game, it's one-to-one interaction, and the real-time conversation makes this just as much a duel as any other to me. Second, Atem wasn't the King of Games yet in the anime, despite being called that in the manga. The entire anime is confusing enough without dub-exclusive garbage like the Shadow Realm being in the conversation, but thankfully, we're actually saved here because Atem and Yugi both defeat Pegasus in his first loss after gaining the title, making them technically both the King of Games after Duelist Kingdom. But Atem was the one to do pretty much everything, with Yugi only being there to pull off one of the most anime strategies ever. If you want a video on that, please let me know. I would love to talk about the mental mind shuffle of doom, or whatever name they gave it after the technique existed, for literally like a minute. Oh, and they lost to Kaiba because he threatened to throw himself off of a castle, but that doesn't really factor in considering he loses to Pegasus and the same old story stays the same. So at the end of the Duelist Kingdom tournament, Atem is still the King of Games, regardless of if you count the initial videotape duel. All on the same page? Good, it's about to get a lot worse. After Pegasus, we're not given much time to breathe before Rebecca Hawkins, some small child that was relevant to the plot maybe once, duels Atem. To make a long and boring duel short, Atem concedes to, and I quote, teach Rebecca about the heart of the cards, and to teach her that winning isn't everything. Atem the kind of guy to say Ash Blossom is the worst card ever made because he can't play his magical musketeer frog deck without crumbling at the first sign of competency. But because this was a duel Atem lost, yes, concessions count. I don't understand why this is a conversation on the internet. Yes, saying that I lose the game means you lose the game. If you tip the king over in chess, you lost the game, you surrendered, that counts. You can't back out and say, oh, but my life points didn't hit 0. That's a punk move, and we don't take punk moves here. But regardless, this is our first completely inarguable transfer of the King of Games title to Rebecca Hawkins. Now, we just have to see her next loss. We shoot from episode 42 all the way to episode 165 with her duel against Valen. Now, some people may say that the Waking the Dragons arc of the original series is non-canon, bad, or just generally not to be thought of in this conversation. My response is that the manga diverges from the anime all the time now, even to the point the Vrains didn't even get one. So I think we can call a spade and say this might as well count as much as the rest. It's still in the same anime regardless. To catch up, this is a 2-on-1 duel that involves Duke Devlin of all people teaming up with Rebecca to take on Valen. This is a bit of a diversion, but this is never talked about in disrespectful Yu-Gi-Oh moments, and I feel like it has to be. Not only is Valen taking on two characters that no one actually takes seriously anyway, not only is he dueling them simultaneously, but he is also withholding the gall to not even use the Seal of Orichalcos, the soul-stealing card that's just inherently broken in the anime, and the whole point of this arc. This is the only duel in the entire season that does not have this card. This is the only one. Random jobbers have the seal, but one of the main goons of the main big baddie of the entire season just decides to not use it to prove a point. So he's even playing a card down the entire time. He didn't even want their souls. He just walks away afterwards saying Joey comes next. What a baller. Anyway, he wins of course, which now makes Valen the king of games. This is how ridiculous it gets. I bet half of you don't even know who this guy is, yet he's the king of games for some reason. This is why your ideas don't work, Kaiba. It leads to king of games Valen, Kaiba. Oh, thank God I get to talk about this one. Joey versus Valen. He said Joey's next, but Joey comes out on top in basically what is the coolest duel of the entire show. They put on armor suits and just start punching each other. This duel might as well be the end of Gurren Lagann. It's just a shonen fist fight, and that's somehow the most refreshing thing in a shonen anime where the cards punch each other and explode. This time it's the people. This is unironically a great duel. Check it out. It's absurd. Anyway, Joey wins and becomes the next king of games like he absolutely deserves. We all love Joey here, and if you don't, you just don't know how to call Time Wizard correctly. Luck is a skill, and Joey is very skilled. The next duel to look at is in the exact same episode, where Joey challenges Mai to a duel. Oh, and by the way, she's a bad guy now, don't worry about it. And Joey collapses from exhaustion and gets his soul taken by the Seal of Orichalcos. He was king of games for not even a full 20 minutes, and he got scammed out the same way he did in Battle City. Incredible. Oh, by the way, just to remind everyone, we skipped over all of Battle City. Merrick doesn't matter in this discussion, and he was literally targeting the wrong guy this entire time. Isn't that amazing? If you can believe it, that's where this discussion ends in DM. Yep, Mai is the queen of games now, I guess. But wait, there's still time left in the video, so how can this be even more absurd and crazy? Well, it's not ham-fisted, I'll tell you that much. I don't need to make up things to make this crazier. There's some controversy here. Mai kinda maybe had a duel lost against Raphael, but that's genuinely up for debate. Okay, look here, listen. This is the entire duel. I'm not even joking. Raphael gets his duel disc out, Mai does the same, and then Mai dies instantly. Usually with these kinds of duels, we get cards flying out from their hand or being dropped, or maybe we see what was on the field, and if we're lucky, we get the last attack. That doesn't happen here. We see Mai collapse with no cards on field, and only the Claw of Hermos in her hand. I'm going to make a controversial take here, and say this does not count as a duel. It's literally just as likely that Raphael played the seal outside of a duel setting, and then just brain blasted Mai. That absurd situation is literally just as likely. Keep in mind, we're watching the same show here. This isn't a duel, Mai is the queen of games. We just kinda have to consider it as such. At least in Duel Monsters. But we have a little special surprise for you at the tail end of the entire show. After the ceremonial duel, we get to see what everyone's doing as a nice little final send-off to all the characters we followed along the way. The last shot of the ending of the entire show, the finale to the original series, has Mai and Vivian Wong, don't worry about her, going up against none other than the Paradox Brothers. Yep, the dudes with the Labyrinth deck from Duelist Kingdom. We don't see anything of the duel, but we do know it's a duel. We see the duel discs and they're all ready to go. So how do we count it? Well, this leads us to our first diversion. If Mai wins, that's the last duel she's ever in, so we can count it as her keeping the title until she dies for all we know. But if the Paradox Brothers win, that means we still have some searching to do. Amazing. If you haven't watched Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, go do that. It's fun and my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Property. But if you have, you'd know that Jaden and his sidekick Cyrus duel against Paradox Brothers and win. So now we have a bit of a question. Are they both the king of games? I guess. We did it with the Paradox Brothers since they kind of feel like one entity more than two people, but with Jaden and Cyrus, we kind of have a precedent, and we have to stretch things out a bit and say they're both defeated the two prior Kings of Games at the same time. If this is confusing, don't worry, let's just talk about Cyrus, because it's super short and makes things super easy to follow. Cyrus loses to Dimitri, the copycat duelist with Atem's deck, which makes the guy trying to be the King of Games the actual King of Games for a short amount of time. I know that wasn't intended, but it's nice he got something, I guess. After Jaden wins against not Atem, Jaden is the sole King of Games from that point for another 20 episodes, until the most confusing duel I could have ever imagined going into this. It's Jaden versus Kaiba Man. And I want to start this by saying Jaden loses, and that's not the issue. The issue comes in two parts. The first issue is determining if the dual spirit Kaiba Man is actually Seto Kaiba, which sounds like a game theory, but I have some points. On the less concrete end, I really doubt that Kaiba, even with his massive ego, would let anyone have Blue Eyes in their deck. He rips up the fourth copy so it'll never be used against him after all. Even when he makes a card that's literally just him, I doubt the spirit would get Kaiba's exact deck and be able to roam around and suck people into the spirit world. Seto Kaiba's so paranoid and self-interested that I don't think he'd have the complete lack of foresight to have this actual monster of himself running around. My actual concrete evidence is that whenever dual spirits that Jaden duels summon a monster that is the same as the duelist, they just kind of walk forward. We see it with Jinzo, we see it with Don Zolug, but we don't see it with Kaiba Man. He's summoned just like any other card. I feel this is enough to confirm this might as well be Seto Kaiba, because we know it's not a dual spirit, and also, what else could he be? The second issue is that it's completely uncertain if this is even real. We don't count dreams for this discussion, or else this would be completely ridiculous, and the episode starts with Jaden losing a duel in a nightmare, so no. It's shown throughout the episode that Jaden's friends are aware of what's going on, and even question if Kaiba is there in the flesh dueling. This is very heavily hinted by the show itself, sub-exclusively. In the dub, you know, it's the dub. Who's really going to actually think that that's canon? After the duel, however, we get a very hand-wavy explanation as to how they're back in the hot springs as they were relaxing in before the duel. Re-stripped from the duel world, may I add, and Cyrus is convinced it was just a dream, but I'd just like to note, Kaiba just clothed these children. That's really weird. I don't know what else to say. I just want to bring that up, that I have no other way of actually interpreting the situation. It's just kinda weird no matter how you look at it. Jaden turns to Wing Karibo, asks if he did that, meaning Wing Karibo, just to help him through something. Even if you don't think it was actually Seto Kaiba, there's a case to doubt this duel ever happened and wasn't just a dream that Wing Karibo started for all of Jaden's friends. Maybe it was only really real to Jaden, since after he comes to from the duel, his buds are what appear to be drunk, like bubbly and happy in the same way kids' anime shows drunk people, you know, that sort of thing. This entire episode is so weird, never gets brought up again, and makes zero sense, so here's what I'll do. I'll give the possibility of it being real a 50-50 the same way we decided the Mai tag duel, and we'll call it a timeline split. So not only is Mai currently the current Queen of Games, possibly, but so is Seto Kaiba, considering he doesn't actually duel again in GX. We're getting a lot of irony here in GX, and it's making my bones weak. So let's keep going on the assumption this wasn't real to continue Jaden's reign as King of Games. I didn't want to keep going, but I have so many questions I might as well cover all of my bases. We're right back into speculation here, but I'm calling this one. Jaden and Cyrus duel on an online simulator, and Jaden loses this. It's a 10-second scene, but it happens, and it's a loss for Jaden and a win for Cyrus. If you don't count this, then Master Duel isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! To you, and you're wrong. Cyrus is back to being the King of Games in another wacky 10-second scene from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. I love this show, but in doing the research for this video, it's become completely nauseating. Later on, not counting a dub-only loss, which, by the way, I gotta remind, doesn't count, Cyrus loses to Frost and Thunder in a tag team with Tyranno Hasselberry. This is the last time Frost and Thunder duel. They're the resident Kings of Games now. But wait just one moment! I would like to say they don't just leave and never return, they're straight up murked. Sartorius' sister Serena imprisons them in a mirror world or something that... I don't... Shut up. Stop asking questions. But I will be the one to ask this question. Who is the king of games now? Is it these two dopes that appeared once and then got sealed? Does it default back to Cyrus? Do we give it to Serena because she sealed them away and kind of just won their lives? It can't be Serena, because taking the soul does not a king of games make. We proved that with Mai and Raphael. But there is a very key difference that doesn't lead the king of games title to be passed to two dudes stuck in mirrors forever. Mai got her soul snatched, but we kept her as king of games. That's because unlike Frost and Thunder, Mai got her soul returned to her mortal body, and therefore could carry on the legacy. Frost and Thunder just, like, they're gone. They're dead. Like, they are straight up dead. So I guess we'll have to default it back to Cyrus? You got lucky, buddy. Nothing makes any sense, but you lost and got another chance because a psychic sealed the guys that beat you into mirrors. This is how the world works now. Ignoring that little side mission, we skip another 20 episodes to Cyrus losing to Zane Truesdale. There's nothing weird about this one, let's all be thankful for that. The next half of the series, Zane holds the title of King of Games, and all makes sense in the world, until Jesse Anderson, controlled by Yubel, defeats him in a duel. I will have to divert this again for a bit, because I don't know if you want to count Jesse or Yubel for that win, considering Yubel was piloting Jesse, but Jesse still had, like, his deck, but the dark version of his deck. So it's a question. Let's sit tight and let's figure it out. Jesse and Yubel only draw to Jaden, so they get to keep the title, until Yubel fuses with Jaden as her last duel. I'm counting this as Jaden, who has Yubel inside him, as the king of games, since he's the dominant spirit in the body, he is the physical form, and Yubel still speaks to him. And also, Jaden, like, forcibly fusing his opponent could just straight up count as a loss if you really want to call it, but, I don't know. If you don't like it, then Professor Banner and his cat get the title too, and that's not happening! Keep going to the tail end of the series where Jesse loses to Yusuke Fujiwara, who is in turn beaten by Jaden, reuniting the dynasty once again. He ends the series the King of Games, until the duel against Yugi and Atem. This is super cool, but makes no sense, has no direct result, and I'm not counting it. It's not, like, I don't care if, oh, Jaden would have lost. We have no idea, and neither of these guys will duel again except for Bonds Beyond Time, where they win against Paradox. That is all. This is where the line has to end. So, the Dynasty of the King of Games has, in order, and by Kaiba's rigorous structure as to what it means, goes like this. Atem lost to Pegasus. Pegasus lost to Atem. Atem surrendered against Rebecca. Rebecca lost in the most disrespectful way ever to Valen. Valen lost to Joey. Joey lost to Mai. Mai got her soul snatched but otherwise kept the title of King of Games. Probably. If you believe Mai lost to the Paradox Brothers, then the line continues. The Paradox Brothers lose to Cyrus and Jaden. Cyrus loses to Dimitri, who loses to Jaden, who loses to Seto Kaiba cosplaying as Kaiba Man. If you believe the Kaiba Man duel was a fever dream or otherwise shouldn't count, the line continues. Jaden loses to Cyrus Truesdale in an online duel, Cyrus loses to Frost and Thunder, Frost and Thunder get imprisoned into mirrors so the title defaults back to Cyrus, Cyrus loses to his brother Zane, Zane loses to Jesse Anderson and Yubel, Yubel is out of the picture either way, and Jesse loses to Yusuke Fujiwara possessed by Night Shroud, who is then beaten by Jaden. That's a count of 19 unique people who have held the title of King of Games, and depending on your prerogative, the current holder of the title is either Mai Valentine, Seto Kaiba, or Jaden Yuki. After this super long video, why not watch one of my shorter ones? Here's one about how possible King of Games Kaiba's signature deck won the World Championship somehow.